morning, everyone, and my name is Jojo. I'm from the Philippines. I'd like to share with you my story, or my company's story about BIM. Uh, our company is called Aidea. We are an all-Filipino company, currently with 260 people based in the Philippines and in Abu Dhabi. And when we started the firm 25 years ago, we always saw ourselves not just as a design practice, but also as a technology provider. And that has been our ethos from the start up to now. And when we started our business, we also were big in integration. So what do we mean by integration during that time? We were looking at integrating our 4 design disciplines: architecture, interior design, master planning, and graphic design. Now, what we also realize is integration happens with technology. So one of the things we do a lot now, since the time that we adopted BIM, is to not only integrate design, but also include technology. And VDC or BIM has been our platform. And a big part of our story is our partnership with ArchiCAD, which goes back 15 years ago when we were a small firm. We started with ArchiCAD 9. So that was a time then there was still PlotMaker. For those who are old enough, before there was a separate software for plotting and for modeling. And eventually in 10, they merged it. So we started at that time. And our firm started in 1995. We started with less than 10 people in a small office in a place called Makati in the Philippines. And this was a time when Asia was booming. So because of that boom, we started our practice, and we kept on winning work. The Asian crisis happened. Instead of decreasing our numbers, we continued to grow as a business. I guess clients liked the way we delivered work. So we were continuously growing from 1995 to about 2005. And as we were growing, one of the questions we asked ourselves is, do we grow by just hiring people? Number one. Second is there a competitive advantage that we can acquire or create in the business so that we can grow further? And third, is there a technology that is emerging in the market that is not available in our region that we can explore and capitalize and create more value? And so instead of hiring more people, our direction was to invest in technology. And that is how we came across a new technology in our region called BIM. And BIM has proven to be one of the biggest or the pivotal moves that we did in the company. We started with BIM without knowing anything about it. And what we thought, we planned to transition the business in different phases. Phase 1, obviously, is for us to evaluate software. And maybe same as many of you people, we looked at 2 of the best softwares or the biggest and most popular softwares for BIM, ArchiCAD and Revit. And we evaluated both and realized that ArchiCAD was the best fit for us for several reasons. Number one, we are architects. We are BIM. ArchiCAD is more intuitive for the kind of work we do. Second is we also design large projects. We do mixed-use, high-rise, and and to us, management of file sizes is important. And so when we look at both, we saw that ArchiCAD was able to handle big files much better than its competitor. And third is the support that we get from the vendor. So from the time that we started the business and up to now, the support that we've been getting for ArchiCAD has allowed us to grow and to develop the technology further. So after we chose which software to use, phase 2 came about. This is the part where we prepared the organization for the adoption of BIM. Remember, during that time, there were no experts in our market. We had to fly people from Budapest and some people who know BIM, ArchiCAD in Singapore to teach us. And that was part of the only training that we got. Second is we had to upgrade our hardware because BIM of course, is memory intensive. We have to acquire software. But the biggest challenge for us in our transition to BIM is managing people's mindset. We were getting a lot of pushback, especially from people who are very good, or I would say experts in 2D technology. And rightly so, because those people who are experts in 2D would lose that expertise when they go to BIM. So we transitioned to BIM knowing that there will be people who will resist it. But nonetheless, we moved, which goes to phase 3. We did an immediate transition in the office. We assigned a date on when we will move to BIM, and for better or for worse, we will adopt BIM, drop all our 2D licenses, and redo, if needed, all our projects in BIM. And that day happened sometime in September of 2005, and as expected, it was chaotic. People were complaining to me. I was overseas at that time, but not because I wanted to avoid the commotion in the office. I was on business trip, but I've been getting text messages, calls, saying how difficult it was to transition to BIM, that we are at risk of missing schedules because we're changing midstream in a project. But one thing we learned about transition is we should never give exceptions. In our case, even people were asking us to finish their projects in 2D. We said no. We said, do what it takes to finish it, get people from other teams, work overnight if needed, just do it in BIM. For about 4 months, we were below productivity compared to 2D. But on the 6th month, we noticed that we were equal in productivity to 2D, which was a good sign for us. And beyond 6 months, we were already gaining the advantages of working in BIM. Then knowledge sharing to us was important. People have to learn how to do BIM, and they also need to share. And the kind of sharing that we did was through word of mouth. We were about 60 people by that time, and whatever tricks we learned, shortcuts, things that you don't see on the BIM, the ArchiCAD manual, we share it so that people learn faster. So you would think that after this 4th phase, we would be very good in BIM. But we didn't. We were not. What we noticed after 1 year of doing BIM is that we were not doing things consistently. There were things who were doing it better than others. There were teams who were creating huge files on BIM, while others were doing it more efficiently. And so what we realized is after 1 year, we need to relook at our system and find ways to improve. And that's when we did what we call the BIM level up strategies. This happened between the 1st and the 2nd year of our BIM transition. We reviewed what we encountered, the problems we encountered in BIM, and addressed those through these 6 steps. Number 1, the question of BIM manager. We were working, our BIM management system was just a copy of our structure when we were in 2D. We had one BIM manager for the whole office, and obviously that didn't work. We were transitioning, we were in the process of still in the learning curve, and we addressed that by assigning more BIM managers. In our office, during that time, we had 4 design studios. All of those 4 have their own BIM managers. Now we have 7. Those 7 studios still have a BIM manager each. These BIM managers are architects doing projects who do BIM managed work concurrently, and that solved our day-to-day issues on BIM. Second is, believe it or not, we started BIM without a BIM manual. And that's where the inconsistency happened, because people were doing projects, were modeling in the way they know best. And there's not consistent across the organization. So the creation of a BIM manual was a top priority for the organization. Took us almost a year to finalize. This is a living document. Whenever there's a new ArchiCAD version, we go back and see if there is a need for us to change BIM manuals. or some parts of the BIM manual. If there's a certain technology that we adopted in BIM, we see how that affects the BIM manual. And this also created consistency in the way we do projects, in the way we model. Third is we questioned ourselves, what are the software in the company that are non-BIM related, aside from 2D, aside from AutoCAD? And what we found is there is a popular favorite architect software that we have to take out of the system. Guess what it is? SketchUp. So that was a big fight in the office. How do we take out SketchUp, which is not BIM, and replace it by a BIM supporting workflow? And it was a big discussion in the office, especially for those staff who are design inclined and those who want to work their design quickly on modeling. And the way we address that is we found settings within ArchiCAD, which has been there all the time, that created SketchUp quality output. Remember, that was ArchiCAD 11 during the time. Now it's more developed. And by the time that we had those settings, we were able to take out SketchUp. Third is learnings. Again, sharing learnings is important. What we realize is, how do we teach new hires? We cannot always start from zero. How do we allow people to go back and relook at the learnings that the other teams have created? So the way we address that is we shared learnings through a digital library. And there's a section there for ArchiCAD, which is called ArchiTips, and that captures every learning in a very documented, organized way on how we learned ArchiCAD and what are the latest tricks, what are the latest learnings that we had in the software. So again, that accelerated learning in the office. New hires don't need to be taught from zero. They can just go to ArchiTips and learn probably 40% of what they need to learn. Mentoring is important. BIM and transition to BIM, we learned, is an effort that involves the whole organization. Our human resources people have to be supportive of the move. So what they do every year is to do what we call a training needs analysis. Look for the gaps together with our BIM managers and the studio and office BIM manager on what are the gaps that we have on BIM learning. And once those gaps are identified, we look for experts anywhere. It might be in the Philippines or in the region or outside of Asia. The important thing is that we address those learnings and make sure that everybody always levels up. And the last is, want to stress this, the importance of auditing your work. It shouldn't be just once for the project. In our system, what we learned is that the modeling and the design work has to be audited every phase of the project. As we go into more detail, we audit more than once. And auditing has become a way of life in our company. No project, no team goes to the next stage of the project unless it passes audit. And why are we doing that? Because we want to make use of the model beyond documentation. We want to make sure that we can use the model for quantification, for downstream work, for construction, and even for post-construction. BIM is such that if you let a small problem grow, then it will be a big problem as you go to the downstream work. And that's why auditing is very important for us. Okay, what were the VDC competence we created in the first 5 years of BIM in the office? Our workflow is such that programming was already done in a BIM-related software. We used a software called Affinity before, and now we're transitioning to Dirofus. Same function, it's just that Dirofus is more robust when it comes to programming, and as we do complicated work, we think that that is a better fit. Our energy modeling and analysis are done using BIM, using the very early BIM models. Solibri has become a big part of our workflow. It checks code compliance. We wrote the rule sets that check codes in our country. Everything is done in the model. This is an example of a project that we've done in the Philippines. High-rise, all done in ArchiCAD. We went as far as going through structural modeling. There are clients, especially those who ask us to do resorts, who want to make sure that everything is not only properly coordinated, but also they want to get quantities out of the model. And it's because of the logistics reason. It's expensive to bring materials in an island project. So we take it as far as structural modeling, MEP modeling, which became a standard deliverable in the office. So some of the work we've done, and the normal clash detection, all done in Solibri. Okay, and when we do our documentation work, we still work, our deliverable is still 2D. But the difference is we are able now to show 3D information, even in printed form, together with plan and elevations. These are all dynamically linked to the BIM, and we tested this technique in many of our job sites, and contractors like it better because many of their workers understand the 3D more than 2D information. If you need to change the model. Our rule is nobody changes on paper. You change the model and everything is updated 2D. So, in 2011, when we felt that we were stable in modeling, we said, what is the next step? We want to create more out of the BIM model. And this is a time that we said, why don't we do and provide more services for our client, more than just a design service? And so part of our service expansion is to work with contractors and construction managers and work with them on creating construction simulation models, doing as-builts, using laser scanners that become a base for our adaptive reuse work. These are some of the examples. This is a project in Scandinavia that we've created from point cloud to BIM. And we started working with facilities managers to see how we could use the BIM for facilities management and asset management work. Okay. So that's done. Stable again. The next question for us is, what's the next step? And in 2014, we did another strategic decision, and we said, why don't we start writing add-ons for our use? Because what we realized is 65% at least of our fees are burned on repetitive work, on production work, things that can possibly be automated. So what we did as a company is we decided to create a software writing division. We got software programmers who are not architects, trained them for a year to think like architects, and asked them to write software for our own use. The earlier softwares that we use, this is the one that architects hate doing, but we need to do this, creating summaries of areas, planning ratios. And this used to take us a couple of days to create after designing. Now we do it on the fly, where we call it the auto executive summary. So there you go. And it requires a different way of modeling. We also created models that will automatically dimension and tag our drawings. So we call it the auto tags and dimension add-on. And this is all done in ArchiCAD, in the API of ArchiCAD. Then we said, why don't we automate door schedule? And so part of what our team did is to create, automate, and set workflows that will automatically generate door schedules for a whole project. These are all mostly high-rise projects that we do, so a lot of time was saved automating this process. And that is also the reason why audit is important, because we need to create models correctly so that we get correct information. So that concept of door auditing was also applied in finishes schedules. So it automatically sets itself in the sheet. And again, as long as the modeling is correct, the output is correct. And same with windows, glazing, curtain wall. It creates its own schedule based on the format that we use in our country. And same with bill of quantities. One of the things we also learned as designers is we have to provide the cost dimension of a project. Many projects, clients fall in love and then they find out that they cannot afford the cost. So we go back and redesign. What we do now is we put costs in front of the process through add-ons that derive costs and quantities out of the project. And the culmination of all of that is what we call the auto contract documentation package. So our strategy is to create a very detailed model and let the system take over and create the working doc drawings of the whole project. And what used to be for a high-rise, a 5-month job is practically reduced to less than 2 weeks. So this is the kind of programming that we created in-house. And lastly, we said, how about specifications? Can we link that to the BIM? And so we created a database of all the materials we use in the project, link that to BIM objects, so that when you put an object to a BIM model, it automatically generates a specification clause and publishes it at the end of the process. Okay, so this is a sample. It's creating the database, and this is the sample output. And Philippines is based on US standards, so this follows CSI format. So what are we trying to achieve here? We're trying to be efficient first at the back end, where in conventional design, it used to take the longest part of our design process, shortening it using the CD automation package and going through our dream, and this will be very soon, is that with full automation, we can shorten the production process and spend more time in design. In 2016, after we've done most of this automation work, we also looked at virtual reality and co-creation, using the same BIM model so that we can study, analyze projects, bring the projects to site, and project it in one-to-one scale. We use this a lot now with our hospital projects and with hotels, showing mock-ups. And this created, again, a lot of savings for the company. And we also do a lot of cloud collaboration using BIM Cloud. And now our collaboration work to anywhere in the world is done through our BIM Cloud system. And also, we use a lot of BIMX applications. Many of our clients like the fact that we can publish our project on all phases using BIMX, so we push that information to them, and the project is available real-time, 24/7. So that is, again, something that was appreciated by the clients. And talking about more immersive ways of working, we went into the realm of gaming application, where we use the BIM model, create a gaming platform out of it. So you choose your avatar, look at projects. It's fully user-defined. So this is one of our ways of explaining and presenting our projects in a different way, something that is more immersive and fun. So many of our clients like this, especially in the concept stage, and we have started to do more of this. This is an early version of those gaming applications. Oops. And also the BIMs linked to our 3D printers. And in 2019, we also realized that customization is important. Many of our clients would like us to support them and to customize applications. So now we created another company called Aidea Technologies that provide this work where we help them migrate, we help them to integrate, and we help them to customize their work. We're working with clients in the US, in Europe, and firms who would like to accelerate the transition to BIM and to move it to a more advanced level. Okay, now how do we see the future? What are we planning to develop as we go further? Number one, we're moving all our visualization tools to Twinmotion, something that's more interactive. Work that used to be done in 1 week can be done in a couple of hours, similar to this. We're also moving into the gaming platform where everything is more interactive. Start to also write scripts. Also, generative design is one of our agenda. We started to look at this and to see how we can create software or add-ons, applications that will help us start design faster, give us options. Machine learning is important, and also applying the BIM through IoT and using data. So what does all of this mean for the business for us? Well, in terms of time, we saved a lot of time, which means money, and which means more opportunities for the business. When you look at the way we grew our business, our workload and manpower, the curve isn't quite the same. We were taking more work, but our staff growth is relatively lesser. We estimate that if we were to do everything in all 2D, we would need about 40% more people at least to do our work that we currently have. And the idea for us is to automate as much as we can so that we can devote more time in design and less time in post-design work. In 15 years of doing BIM, we listed our top 10 learnings, and I'd like to share those with you. Number one, we hire learners and not experts. To work in our office, you need to be a good architect and a good designer, and you have to be open-minded. We do not hire people because they are experts in BIM. We teach them how to do BIM properly. They learn by doing. Not all of what they should learn is done through training. We have a 50-50 ratio where 50% is learned to training and 50% is learned to working with people who know how to use BIM on a real project. Kick-off is very important. Some call this a BIM execution plan. But if you have a wrong kick-off, then the rest of the BIM process might be at risk. So to us, we spend a lot of time kicking off a project. As you mentioned, there is no one software that does all. So learn how to integrate software and solution so that you can use and capitalize and maximize the use of each software. Audit is important. I mentioned earlier, audit is a big part of our workflow. You have to make sure that you have enough checks in place. Mistakes aren't failures. We made a lot of mistakes in our BIM transition. Probably made all of the mistakes that people have created. But we see that as a learning opportunity. And though we also wasted a lot of money on software that ultimately didn't work for us. And that's fine. We accepted that, and we've already accepted the fact that not everything works for us. Co-create with partners. Look for partners who can level up your game. It's the same with sports. If you work with the pros and you play with the pros, you can be better, right? So we always look for people who we can collaborate with and who are better than us. Vision is important. People have to understand why you're doing this. Moving to BIM and making it work has a lot to do with winning hearts and minds of people. And so if they're clear with the vision, they will support it. Your kitchen or your workplace is also very important. Make sure that you're creating a workspace that is innovative and that invites or is conducive to innovation. And more importantly, BIM transition starts from the top. It is not just the concern of technical people, of the IT, it is more of a concern of top management. BIM will only succeed, transition will only succeed if it has support from the top level of management. I've seen people who approach me and said, our managers cannot understand, they're not supportive, and that's why our BIM effort, our BIM transition is not successful. So you might ask, having BIM, do we still draw? Do we still draw by hand? Do we still sketch the old-fashioned way? Do we still do visioning exercises? We do. And we do that more now. And I'll give you an example of a project where we combine BIM, storytelling, and all of the different things that make a project interesting. This is our entry to the Philippine Senate design. Or we're designing something that could possibly be the home of the Senate for the next 100 years. Since this is an institution that represents us as a nation, it should also embody the uniqueness of the Filipino. We ran a survey nationwide to engage the people to co-create the new home of the Senate. We were surprised with the responses we got.
The Senate is supposed to be a chamber imbued with gravitas and a national perspective.
We would like to have a bacon security in the design.
It should be capable of embracing the people.
Maaliwalas at matiwasay na na building.
Memorable.
Transparency.
Mapagtanggap po.
They want the new home of the Senate to be welcoming, to represent honor and dignity, that will leave a better environment for future generations. The next step for us is to think of a metaphor. What will best represent welcoming, honor and dignity, and sustainability in a form that is uniquely Filipino? If you look at the seal of the Senate, the braids there, the flower, represents sampaguita, and that represents honor and dignity. The most elegant way of translating sampaguita to art is through the weave. I have my favorite barong embroiderer. I realized that they could be micro-creators. So what we did is we invited them from Laguna. They stayed and worked closely with our designers and developed patterns and symbolism that best represent the braided sampaguita. We mapped that in our basic building mass and projected it in virtual reality. We were able to create both the formal and informal side. The form of the building, which you can see is a bud of the sampaguita. Our design has considered a very smart way of facing the project so that we save more than 1.5 billion pesos in capital expense. The mechanical systems that we are introducing considers not only the capital expense side, but also how we will operate the building in the next 100 years, because that has a bigger impact in sustainability. There's a message that we'd like the architecture to convey. Like the braids of the sampaguita, we have to work as a nation. Each one, the senators, the people, working hand by hand, being bound by one string, and that string is our aspiration for a better country. Thank you.